Well, it is June 19th, and it is 2 p.m. on the dot. Here on the west coast of the United States of America. My name is Arthur. I hope that you are having a very, very good day. Bob says, hello, I'm back from a 2-week suspension. Bob, you could be watching this on YouTube. You don't have to be watching on Twitch, but I'm kind of curious why you got suspended. I'm not very familiar as to the entirety of Twitch's policies or whatever like that, but let us know what's going on there. Sky Apologetics says, oh yeah, here we go. Yes, sir. Here we go. God is good says, hey. So go ahead, hit that like button, drop a comment. Let us know how you're doing. How was your Father's Day? Now, I do understand that holidays of this sort are not necessarily always a very positive experience for everyone. There are individuals that haven't necessarily had good dads. There are individuals that do not know who their fathers are. There are individuals whose fathers have passed away. So there's all sorts of reasons why a day like Father's Day could be sour for some people. There are individuals who really want to be fathers and cannot be for various circumstances. And it's always hard. It's always hard for me to balance excitement of days like that and but at the same time be mindful of those around me. So how do you guys work through that? If you do. Hey, Autumn, how you doing? Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Happy Father's Day to you as well. I've been messing around with my logo software, and not that I didn't know how to use it, but I needed a refresher, and I'm getting a refresher, and I'm like, oh man, there are all these things I haven't been using to its fullest capacity. So ask some Bible questions. Ready for your questions, anywho's. I think eventually I'm going to need new headphones, earphones, whatever. My ears are weird. I need ones that are right on instead of to the way. By the way, as I opened up my Logos software today, I was told that today is... Wow, I just realized there's another really important day today. Dude, this is nuts. Okay, so 1939, June the 19th, John MacArthur is born. So happy birthday to Pastor John MacArthur. Then I noticed that June 19th, 1566, James I of England is born. And then I just realized that June the 19th, 1623 is the birth of Blaise Pascal. That's some interesting individuals there. And maybe more importantly and more famous than all of it is June 19th, 325, the Council of Nicaea convenes. June 19th, and it's Juneteenth, is a very important day. I don't get any more. I don't see any more birthdays or important days on this day. But hey. So let me know, guys, what's going on? How are you doing? What have you been thinking about and thinking through? I feel like one of the things that I probably need to do a deeper dive into is the subject of divine simplicity. I've kind of withheld myself from doing a deep dive into divine simplicity, but it seems like I might have to. Partly also because there's a lot of people out there who read church fathers, who have certain presuppositions, these church fathers, and who are trying to argue for something. And then these individuals misunderstand these church fathers and then misquote them to everyone else. And make them say things that they never intended on saying. Arnold said, do it. Yeah, Arnold, I'm a bit afraid. I'm a little afraid to jump into that subject because it is a subject. that was a pretty, it's like, duh. Yes, it is. But the tone communicated something different than the truism that I stated, right? I said, I got to get into the subject and I'm scared. It is a subject. Well, it's a subject, but it is a heavy subject. Now, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should have one of you guys buy me a book. Did this book already come out? Man, I didn't realize. That's a pretty. So this is a book on divine simplicity, a dogmatic T.N.T. Clark studies and stuff like that. Divine simplicity, dogmatic accounts. John West. That's not the one. If you force me to study it. Hey, good evening. Good evening, Jackson. Hey, by the way, Armenia, congratulations. Beat Latvia today. And our joint sixth, well, Turkey won the game, so. But they're in second place, which is really good. 90th minute penalty to win that game. Well done. That's 2 wins in a row for Armenia. They're playing well. It should have been a lot more than that. So I was recommended a certain book that I'm trying to find the authors to. So this is what happens to the stuff I write down. I think this might be it. Let's see. Go ahead, by the way, drop comments. We'll deal with that. That doesn't seem right. I guess I'll find that one of these days. But it's, oh, I think it's here. Aha. Yes. Divine Simplicity, 5 views. That's what it is. The book might not be out. Can multitask, guys. If you guys are writing questions, go ahead, drop that. Oh, let me just jump into this. Rosalind Mitchell, are you still offering the apologetics course mentioned in the Bless God podcast? Yeah, there's multiple ways you can get your hands on that, Rosalind. Can you please just email me at info@apologia. By the way, we sort of are, like, we haven't started the thing, but we're going to try to revamp the website. And once the website is revamped, there will be hosted on the website itself an e-course section where people can purchase the e-courses. Okay, but we're working on that. So that's my email, info@apologiacenter.com. Rosalind, just send it to me, and then I'll give you 2 options of how you can get that. I'd say one of them's easier than the other, or I would prefer one of them over the other. But it'll still be your choice. So there is a book that's coming out, I suppose, or has come out. I have no idea why. I can't see it online, but it's supposed to be, maybe it's this. It's a 5 views book, Divine Simplicity. No problem. Anytime, Rosalind. Okay, let's try this other famous name. Bhadev, what's up, bro? Okay, I forgot to let you know that a few months ago, I met Dr. Persley. Excellent. And he invited me to International Bible Church. Nice. I went once, but haven't been able to go back since due to a hectic schedule. Gotta attend again. Do so, man. Get connected with Jacob. He's a great guy. He's a great guy to have around you. And just he will pour into you, man. It'll be very beneficial to you. This is well, evil voice. It should be like, well. If it isn't my good old nemesis, Arnold. Mike, what's going on? I suppose this book hasn't come out yet. And I thought it had. Maybe it's coming up in the fall. If that's the case, then I'll just hang out for my Divine Simplicity study till the fall. Hello, what's going on? By the way, I want to do like a little review of a video, or I actually want to. I'll make a pre-recorded video of the comment section of a specific video because they're just insane. Okay, so I found this guy. And Department Chair, Philosophy, College of Arts and Sciences, St. Thomas. Books, articles, I want books. I don't think I've ever looked so hard for a book. Yeah, I guess it's not. It's not even in pre-order. Oh well. Greetings. What's up, Emma? How you doing, man? What's up, Righteous Through Christ? No, he's not a mod. He is a channel member. You can become a channel member, by the way. You get like stickers and stuff. Or I should add that you can also become a patron on Patreon. Correct. It is called a member. Get your terms right. We're just sitting here. What would be a typical Armenian lunch? That's a complicated question, man. It really depends where you're from. It depends what sort of an Armenian you are and where you're from. But if you want to eat like a heavier meal, get a full plate of, some barbecue, get some greens in there, get some rice, you'd do very well. Or it could just be like whatever was for dinner last night. There we are, yeah. One serve with 3 appetizers, 4 sides, and dessert at the end. Any unique holidays? Yeah, we got a long history like Armenians do. There's a lot of unique holidays. There's some pagan ones that have stuck around in various ways. What would be the weirdest holiday, guys? My guys who are in the chat, what would be the weirdest Armenian holiday? That'd be really interesting. Hey, stop making dates in my chat, man. Now I'm down for that, but not on July 4th. Oh, something in July. I thought you said July 4th. Sure, why not? It was great. I was still tired from it. I was with my brothers, my dad, some of the extended family, and what did we eat? We eat everything. Lots of food. I made pizza that I eat, and for the kids, my brother just got a pizza oven, so that's cool. It's cool cooking in there, but barbecue and salads and other really rich food, and just lots of kids, like 20 kids around. What is something interesting you have come across while browsing the Logos Bible software? So wait, I'm confused. Do you mean like content-wise, what is something interesting I've come across, or in regards to what the software offers? So is it a software question, or hey, like stuff you've learned? That's cute. Man, Terendez is really bad one. Yeah, that's a pretty big one. I think it's specifically said in scripture, not. I don't know. So Autumn. This is something that Christians use quite a bit, like Protestants predominantly. Do not make your kids go through the fire and stuff. That has to do with child sacrifice. I still think Terendez is a very pagan holiday, and then the church has tried to somehow redeem it to no avail, in my opinion, as opposed to other holidays where I think the church has done a pretty good job of redefining and, applying it differently, but Tarandes is a weird one, yeah, because you jump over fire and it's for newly married folks, and it's it's essentially a fertility ritual for them to have kids, and it has to do with ancient pagan worship of the sun and fire. So it's one of my disliked ones, as opposed to Vartavar, for example, coming up here in July, which I don't mind. It's just a giant, like, nationwide water fight. Even though that has pagan roots as well, I just don't think it's as talking about the irony there with the fire and the water, right? Christmas was a pagan holiday as well, worshiping. There's plenty of responses that have been made on whether Christmas is or is not. And I'm actually pretty decently convinced that Christmas was not a pagan holiday. I think that is a common myth that lots of non-believing folks like to bring up. When you go and look at the details as to when and what the Romans were celebrating and what the date actually was and why Christians actually celebrated on the 24th, 25th, you realize that there's very little ground to stand on. I think probably the best guy to watch on this that breaks it down in regards to primary sources is Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy. He's put in a lot of effort in combating these things every holiday season, whether it's Christmas or Easter. There's just a lot of random myth around that's like serious myth. Nobody reads nobody is reading primary sources when it comes to this stuff. Like, it was close in date, right? So I don't buy that. I'm actually not going to go with that being pagan. I mean, the stuff I'm talking about is we know for sure in Armenian tradition had. Now, if you're going to say the Christmas tree had roots in paganism and was used, I'm not necessarily against on that being used by the Viking peoples in regards to the tree, and why even Christians would have adopted something like that. It's quite a bit of rich theology behind why they would have accepted that, and what the similarities are, the crossovers are, and those things that aren't. Yeah. The solstice was a really good reason, but that's not what Christmas is. You realize that, and that has nothing to do with that. Again, I think the primary, you got to call primary sources on this stuff, not just like, oh, look, there's 2 days. Christians have celebrated this, and then these people have celebrated this. Oh, look at that. It must be they stole it from them. It's like, no, they actually calculated a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of reasoning that goes into the background of some of this stuff. As to why Jesus' birthday would be in December, for example, and on that day specifically. Christians didn't just go and see a Roman holiday. There's, one of the things would there be, they thought that people were, or special people, you could say, were died on the same day that they were born. And so they did this calculations and then came across December because they knew the death day of Jesus. Partly why January 6th is celebrated in the earliest sources that we have when it comes to Jesus' baptism and his revelation, or the Epiphany Day. So just be very careful not to buy into popular myths when it comes to the reasoning as to why folks have done X, Y, and Z. Jay Sharp says, how should we go about discussing the moral argument? Got to be a bit more specific for me than that, man. Please. What's up, David? How you doing, man? By the way, Adam, I'm not saying that I like Tarandes. I'm just saying that verse specifically, I don't think should be used in that context because it has to do with child sacrifice. I agree there is a lot too, but Jesus being dead for 3 days, then rising in very similar correlation doesn't determine causation. It's, by the way, you're confusing some things as well. Jesus' birth as opposed to his death. So if it was truly a correlation, what they would have done, if it was truly a causation, what they would have done is celebrate Easter during those days, about the sun rising or the eclipse going on and all that stuff, and then the Son of God rising. But it's not. It's the birth, right? Not the death, not the resurrection. So, like, for me, like, notice, like, you're seeing similarities, but then in the Christian calendar, what you're talking about is months later or earlier. And it's like, oh yeah, but here's a person where these things are known about. It's like, and then what? Okay, so again, J Sharp, just specifically, man, please. It's very hard for me just to assume a bunch of things. Also, depending on the mood I'm in and how much I've been reading and kind of what my train of thought is and where my mind is currently, I can't answer general questions like that. Like, oh, any objection to the moral argument? I read that and there's nothing comes right now, at least. Maybe some other time. But if you're like, hey, somebody told me that the moral argument was X, Y, and Z, how would you respond to this? Then I would say, okay, here's what my thoughts on the subject would be. When it comes to what is pagan or what isn't, it's become such a headache, especially the division about Christmas and Easter. When you do the research, you realize that there's not much people can stand on. Nowadays, it's really hard to trace which came. That's not true. Original sources, always original sources. So if you haven't, I assume you might have already, but check out Michael Jones's videos and all that stuff. Fadi, how are you? What are your thoughts on William Lane Craig's Historical Adam? I have not read the book, so I have no thoughts on the book. I've heard Craig speak about the book in person. I've seen people push back on him, scholars of various sorts, geneticists, Old Testament scholars, theologians, and I've seen Craig respond. What he's saying is, he's essentially saying it's an option that somebody can pick. Now, it's not that he denies a historical Adam. He actually thinks there is this primitive person that he calls Adam, but that's a part of our like evolutionary history. But the story in regards to around Adam in the Bible, he says it's different. Oh, man. Like, you know, I'm too tired to get upset over a stupid statement like this. There's so much arrogance and stupidity in your statement. Really. The guy has 2 PhDs. He's probably one of the most well-known, he's top 50 philosophers over the last 100 years. At the very least, if not top 25. And you're a guy on the internet, on YouTube, typing away, who doesn't make very good arguments, by the way, just to be frank with you. And you are arrogant enough to sit there and call someone like that a hack. The guy's written more books than you have in your vocabulary. Words in your vocabulary. And because you're on the internet and you got a keyboard in front of you or you're on your phone, you think you can make a comment like that. Like, just have some humility, man. You don't have to agree with them, but have some humility. William Lane Craig is definitely, you know what? Let me just show you this. Top 50 philosophers of the last 100 years. The issue is that you've only interacted with William Lane Craig when it comes to his maybe apologetic conversations. Like, again, you don't have to agree with him, but to say he's a hack, just to me is just like, oh gosh, like, go away. I think recently there was a whole thing that came out. Who's the most influential? So this is a Quora question. Who's the most influential philosopher of the last 50 years? Let's see. Philosophy blog. Did I forget? I remember reading that article where they had done that study. I didn't say all time, by the way. Okay, I said last 100 years. Hey, what's up, Sky Apologetics? Do I know Centennial Apologetics? Not personally, no. Hang on. No, Radioactive Trees doesn't even care about that because he's not a Christian. Barry says you won't find him on the list. I remember reading an article when he was on the list. As a philosopher, Al Planiga will actually be above Bill Craig. Man, it's a guy with he's a guy with a keyboard. Like, just again, like, what have you accomplished? Not just you, like, what have I accomplished? Right? Like, do you know the amount of books the guy's written? Do you know the amount of articles the guy's written? I'm talking like philosophical stuff, not necessarily popular level stuff. Like his education. He's debated the best philosophers who are atheists out there. The best. Some of them are terrified to debate him. But you can sit and say he's a hack. It's the equivalent of me sitting here and just saying something like, I don't know, Anthony Flew, right? Before he was a theist, and reading Flew's philosophical work, just making a dumb comment like that because I disagree with the guy. It's like, go away. Okay. You realize William Lane Craig didn't come up with the Kalam argument. I hope you know that. Everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. His first statement in the Kalam argument leads to an infinite regress when you add God to it. How? Wait, are you actually going to say like what caused God? Oh my gosh, man. Please don't. That's the only way you could actually get there. Hey, atheists, come collect radioactive trees, please, before I like destroy them. Don't make me embarrass you, bro. Please. This stuff gets recorded. Don't say stuff like that. Sometimes I can't tell if Arthur's frozen because I think so still. Is that what your claim is? I just asked if that's what your claim is. Is your claim that it leads to an infinite regress because you're going to say what caused God? You realize by definition it doesn't go to a infinite regress because your accusation would have to assume a God that has a beginning. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. Right? The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And you're like, oh, if you add God to it, it leads to an infinite regress. It doesn't because you're adding a God to it that doesn't have a beginning. Like if disagree, agree, good argument, bad argument, deductively, you have no case. Whether it's arbitrary, whether you're assuming it, it doesn't matter. Your initial statement where it was, if you add God to it, it leads to an infinite regress, falls on its face, and is completely demolished. Please do not say stuff like this in public, especially in front of people who know what they're talking about. Now, if you were to say, if you were writing a paper for my philosophy class, I just like mark you down 5 points and say, hey, Bob, what you need to say is something like, if you add a finite God to it, it would necessarily lead to an infinite regress. Possibly, not even necessarily. It would possibly lead to an infinite regress. Because then you would have to have a series of finite gods. Unless the guy arguing against you says, well, hey, look, all these finite gods actually come from a God that is infinite and never had a beginning. Uncaused cause, an immovable mover, like the one that Plato suggested. The fact that this comment specifically is the one I'm dealing with, right? Everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. His first statement of the Kalam argument leads to an infinite regress when you add God to it. This tells me you don't know what you're talking about. It actually tells me you haven't done much reading and research into argumentation, into the Kalam argument itself, into what people who are actually writing at a philosophical level are arguing against the Kalam. This is why I said, don't say stuff like this. And I told your atheist friends to come and collect you because I'd just destroy you. And you said, do it. You're welcome. You are very welcome.
This is a sickness of the highest order.
Hey, Jerome, please tell him to stop. Or else I'm going to have to teach him logic. You assume that God doesn't have a beginning, which leaves you to prove this God's existence. So how do you prove it? That's a completely different question. I don't need to do that to prove that you're wrong. I don't even need to believe in God to prove that your statement initially was just a stupid statement. But again, you can get on a keyboard and say something like, Craig is a hack. And you don't even know how deductive reasoning works. You don't even know how logical deductions work. Or when an argument is valid or sound. Just again, humility. Please. You guys, develop the character of humility. And I'm not just saying this for Christians, because this is something the very ancient thinkers have spoken about. Humility is a virtue. Develop it. The internet is a cesspool for arrogance. Develop humility. Please. I beg of you. Jerome said, tell who? Radioactive trees, man. No. No, this is, again, you fail. You get an F. You fail. If you're taking a class with me, I'd fail your butt. For making a statement and then not understanding the statement you were making and then trying to change the conversation. It's called the bait and switch, by the way. And we're not going to fall for it. I'm not going to fall for it. Now, you could bring whatever you're saying, this comment you're making, might even be a better reasoning. But to say what you said initially, and I'm not going to address this because my initial comment was not whether you think the Kalam is good. It's this comment. I'll post it on the screen again. That in his first statement in the Kalam argument leads to an infinite regress when you add God to it. We've added God to it. It doesn't lead to an infinite regress. You don't even have to agree that it's... Do you think seriously, like, you're the first one to come up with a counter to the Kalam? No serious philosopher. You think you've realized it and all those serious philosophers never realized this problem? No one brings this argument up. And if they do, they're not philosophers. They don't know what they're talking about. Because they realize, you know what, let me just give me a second. find it. I was trying to look for a video of Michael Roos just saying, don't say stuff like this. But this statement itself, this is what I commented on about people having to come and gather you, because just don't. Nowhere in and nothing in the first premise, everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence, even if you add God to it, because by definition you're adding a God to it that didn't begin to exist. Now you could say it's special pleading. Now you could say, but nobody's adding God to it. By the way, that's not even the conclusion. The conclusion is that there is a cause to the universe. It could be many things, but at the very, it's actually a very humble conclusion. There is a cause to the universe. What could this cause be? That's the conclusion. The Kalam argument has been around for a very long time. It was developed by Muslim scholars, by the way. It is a cosmological argument for God's existence. Hundreds and hundreds of years of thinking, you're sitting here saying it leads to infinite regress, which it doesn't. Even if you add God to it, it just doesn't. This is a very poorly stated and wrong. It's not even an argument. It's just an opinion. And it's a bad one. Shame on you, Jerome. Tell him why is that? Who knows? Oh my gosh. You don't add God to the conversation. That's a part of the conclusion. Why would you add God to it? Then it will no longer be the kalam. Like, what are you saying, man? Again, humility, think how arguments work. Just because you spend a lot of time on the internet doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. You literally need to prove it. Everything that begins to exist has a cause for its, because everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. You don't need to prove it. If it's so easy, what you need to do is show something that began to exist without any causes. And all you need is one thing. You can't be this arrogant, dude. Like, arrogance maybe is the wrong word. Forgive me. It's not arrogance. It's intellectual dishonesty. What's up, Pat? Radioactive trees, man. Just don't. Like, please. It's not a good argument. Like, I'm aware enough to look at an argument, just like forget my intentions and beliefs and agreements and disagreements. Okay? I can look at an argument and we'll go back. Hey, is this a sound argument? Does this argument make sense? Even if I disagree with the conclusion, does the conclusion follow? Oh my gosh. You know what, man? It's kind of like it's sort of like I'm arguing with my 5-year-old. It's sort of like when I tell my 5-year-old, here's what this is, and he goes, why? And I go, well, it's because of these reasons. And then he goes, but why? And I go, it's these reasons. It's like, but why? But why? It's like, at that point, you don't even want to learn. You just want to say, but why? This is ridiculous. You are putting God in a special category for no reason. You realize by definition when we talk about God, at least the Christian, it is in a different category than everything that has beginnings. There is a reason for it because we're talking about a different sort of thing. If I was trying to defend gods that began to exist, then I would agree with you. But I'm not trying to defend gods that began to exist. So it has to be in a special category, dude. Like, stop. Like, can you do me a favor, Radioactive Trees? Tell me one legitimate philosopher who is arguing against the kalam the way you're arguing it. I'll pull it up right now. We'll look at it. Just professional philosopher who's arguing against the kalam cosmological argument the way you're arguing for it. We'll pull it up and look at it. I mean, in written form, we'll break it down. We'll look at it. Barry says, okay, so I think where William Lane Craig fails in his conclusion that it's a personal God. Do you understand that by personal God, he means one that has a will, not personal like relational? Barry, just making sure we're talking about the same stuff. You get that's what personal means. It means to have a volition or a will or agency. Before I respond, I want to make sure that Barry and I are on the same page. Okay, so the argument would necessarily follow because there was nothing and there had to be a decision that was made in order for things to be. How is that a non sequitur? I got this on Amazon, guys. Hey, Radioactive Trees, I'm not going to entertain you anymore. Barry actually is doing logic here. You don't know what you're talking about. No, we're not saying everything has a cause except God. We're saying everything has a beginning except God. Again, it just shows you don't understand the conversation. You don't understand the argument. That statement just shows you're ignorant. So Barry, we're going to talk to Barry about this. Okay, Barry. I like by the way, the Martian guy was one of my favorite cartoon characters. Why would there be a decision? Because you have something rather than nothing. That's the given. Because if no decision was made and there was nothing, and there's no decision made, there would still be nothing. It wouldn't somehow necessarily come into existence. I mean, you would argue that the universe is some kind of a necessary byproduct of some whatever it may be. I want to know how it's a non sequitur. You said it's a non sequitur. What I'm saying is that the fact that, let's just go through the argument. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. the universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. By the way, nowhere in the argument, does it say what kind of a cause it is. And then you caught that and you said, well, the problem is sort of his elaboration to explain, like what kind of a cause would be the cause. And one of the things he says is that this cause would have to be a volitional agent, right? A volitional being, something that has a will. It's also known as personal. And you go, that's a non sequitur, because a non sequitur, by the way, is the conclusion or statement does not logically follow. And the response is the conditions show that it logically follows. You have nothing and then you have something. And then you got a cause. Now, what you're going to have to show that this cause would have to be like a static thing that necessarily brings about something else. Now, that's a heavy weight to lift. It is more logical and reasonable to say there's a decision that's made. At the very least, you can say the decision that's made. This thing at least has the ability to make one decision, which is bring into existence or keep things the way they are. Your argument that it's a non sequitur doesn't follow in any way. Look, I can respond to as much as you guys put out there, right? So if you're saying it's a non sequitur and I'm telling you it's not, and I show you how it's not a non sequitur, don't jump to something else. You made an original claim. Like, what's his name? Radioactive Trees said, oh, if you add God to it, it falls into infinite regress. Number one, there's a serious question. Why add God to it? It no longer will be the kalam if you do that, like in premise one. However you're going to do that, I don't even know how that would look. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. So does God. Like everything that begins to exist, how? Even if you were to. So I dealt with that and I said, don't say that. It's not very smart. Barry has a more kind of logical reasoning here. I appreciate that. He's saying it just doesn't follow that this cause would have to be a cause that has a decision making. You're assigning agency. No, I don't need to demonstrate other options. All that needs to understand is that all that needs understood, sorry, the wording is really bad. All that needs understanding is that we don't know all possible options, one being a cause without agency. Then you can't say the argument's false. What you can say is you're withholding judgment on the argument. You can say, right? So you can take an agnostic position on it and say there could be something else. I don't know. I'm just not convinced by Craig. Okay, which is fine. You can say that. But what you said is completely different. You said he fails at it because it's a non sequitur. It's not a non sequitur. It is one of, according to you, it's one of many. Now, the individual giving the argument, say Bill Craig says, here it is. You say it's a non sequitur. He says, no, it's not. Here it is. Because it logically can be deduced. You say, no, well, it could be many other things that we don't know about. Cool. You still can't say it's a non sequitur. What you could say is, I'm not convinced by that. There could be other options I don't know about. Cool. Be agnostic about the argument. Well, you can say it's a non sequitur. You guys cannot make positive cases for something being not the case. And then once it's shown you're wrong, backtrack and say something else. It doesn't work like that. And again, if somebody knows how they're arguing with you, they'll call you out on this sort of stuff. Oh, gosh. You don't know how arguments work, do you? Radioactive Trees. William Lane Craig makes the conclusion without determining that a personal God is the only option. Well, he could do it in papers he's written and books he's written. By the way, why do you think it is that the amount of people that Bill Craig has debated, people don't pursue this point more? Okay, let me just so we can end this conversation here, because Radioactive Trees keeps saying the same thing over and over. Maybe he's expecting a different result. They do. Oh yeah, you've seen Craig film many times. Congratulations. Okay, they have pursued it. No one to. No, I've seen people pursue it. They haven't been successful. Okay, even in the written word, I'm not even talking about debates. Debates are something else. I'm not concerned about that. Okay, in the written word, just to read what special pleading is. Special pleading is an informal fallacy wherein one cites something as an exception to a general or universal rule or principle without justifying the special exception. So let me rephrase it. God, the one that Christians believe in, by definition, is the sort of thing that doesn't have a beginning. That's what we want to defend. The sort of being that doesn't have a beginning. Now, if you're going to ask me to prove why God would have to be the sort of thing that wouldn't have a beginning, that's a completely different conversation for me to justify why I would think about God like that. A beginningless being. That's fine. You can say that. But if we go into a debate, you and I, and we have already agreed upon what we mean by God, which is how debates work generally. Okay? Generally, when you go into a debate, the atheist and the Christians say, here's what we mean by God, just so we are talking about the same thing. I'm talking about a God that doesn't have a beginning, that's a personal agent, X, Y, and Z. The atheist says, cool, that's the God I'm disagreeing with. I think that God doesn't exist. Cool. You can't go into the debate and start arguing against a God that has a beginning. Because all the Christian's going to do is say, that's nice. That's not what I'm defending. You're not arguing against something I believe in. And you're going to look like a fool. Now, you might decide, so they can use the kalam in that argument, and you can't say that. You might decide to have a debate with someone on the subject of, if a God were to exist, would this God have to be eternal, beginningless, or would it have to have a beginning? That's a fair, and that would be a completely different debate than the one on the kalam. You see what we're talking about here? You guys need to learn how to argue. And you guys need to learn to argue on the right stuff, about the right stuff. Can't just make these claims in the air and it's like, no, I've seen atheists do that, by the way. I've seen them get up there and start arguing against a God that has a beginning. And then the Christians say, what are you talking about? I don't believe that. Good job. I agree with you. I agree that if a God had a beginning, that God would not be God. The thing that brought it into existence is greater than it. And then what? So again, Jerome, don't talk generally. Give me a debate. Okay? Because not everyone does this. By the way, the best person that I've seen debate Bill Craig has been Austin Dacey. Specifically on this subject. Even though I think, what's his name? From Caltech did a really good job. I forget his name. But they were talking about cosmological stuff. And Craig was, I think, out of his expertise there. Like, if you guys are going to talk about debates, talk about specific debates. By the way, I was live there when Bill Craig debated the great atheist Christopher Hitchens. Can I prove that the universe has a beginning? Yeah, I think you can quote all the scientific data on it for a Big Bang. Yeah. It's reasonable to conclude the universe had a beginning. That's one. You can make philosophical arguments why it would be necessary for the universe to have a beginning. I think the concept of an actual infinite, that sort of reasoning leads towards it. Yeah, of course you can. Jerome, can we please stop saying special pleading when talking about this? You are literally throwing if you do this. Yep. It's bad. Just like stop it. I literally read to you what. Look, I'm even giving you guys tips on how to do this. Bro, it doesn't. You don't. Look. Again, we're talking about two different things. If I'm going into a debate with you and I say, here's what I'm defending. A God that doesn't have a beginning. You can't say, okay, sure, and then go into the debate and start arguing and saying, prove to me that God would not. That would be a different debate. If you want to debate whether it's reasonable to believe in a God that has a beginning or not a beginning, that is a completely different conversation than the original one you made. That if you add God to this argument, it leads to an infinite regress. It doesn't. You were wrong, and you were proven to be wrong. And I told you, stop saying stuff like that because it's embarrassing. But you continued on with it. Now you're changing the debate. I ain't going to allow you to. Because I got the mic, basically. Also, I want to give some other people opportunities here. No, there's no conclusion that the universe had a beginning. That's only a hypothesis. It's nice. It's a theory. It's a theory that the Big Bang happened and the universe had a beginning. What are you going to do? Say the same thing that really wacky religious people say and say it's not a law, it's a theory. It's not a hypothesis, by the way. There are people who believe it as a legitimate theory. Non-Christian people. Just Barry, don't. That's not that again. That's not very good in regards to argumentation. It's a hypothesis. Okay. God brought everything into existence. Evil exists. Therefore, God brought evil into the world. This is a really bad argument. Go think about it, American Cuban, and then come back. He said it's not a theory. I'm reading from space.com. What is the Big Bang Theory? Updated May 12, 2023. The Big Bang Theory is our best guess about how the universe began. This is space.com. Okay. Written by Andrew May, Elizabeth Howell. The Big Bang Theory is the leading explanation of how the universe began. Simply put, it says that the universe as we know it started with an infinitely hot and dense single point that inflated and stretched first at unimaginable speeds and then at a more measurable rate over the next 13.7 billion years to still expanding cosmos that we know today. Oh, Barry, man, come on. It's a guess. You guys, come on, man. This can't be the best stuff. Just please don't. Do we have anyone in this chat who's an atheist, who's like a cosmologist? Here, why am I should just show you guys this stuff. Here we go. Science.nasa.gov, okay? Astronomers combine mathematical models with observations to develop workable theories of how the universe came to be. The mathematical upbringings of the Big Bang Theory include Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity along with standard theories of fundamental particles. Today, NASA spacecraft such as the Hubble Space Telescope and the Spitzer Space Telescope continue measuring the expansion of the universe. One of the goals has long been to decide whether the universe will expand forever or whether it will someday stop, turn around, and collapse in a big crunch. By the way, the idea here, that this last sentence assumes that it started at a single point, it's expanding, and then it's going to come back. And it's called the oscillating universe model, where it kind of expands, collapses, expands, collapses, right? And some people want to argue that that's been going on for an infinite amount of time. And there's various conversations about that. But again, Barry, don't. It's a guess. Come on, dude. Inflation. By the way, this is a article on the Big Bang, and it actually speaks about alternative theories and stuff like that, like inflation. I'm surprised why it's not called a Big Bang guess. Barry, they should listen to you. You should go advise NASA. Tell them, hey, NASA, stop calling this the Big Bang Theory. What you guys should call it is the Big Bang guess. Sorry, who agrees with me on this? Context. How are you going to make a statement? Some people believe it, but most astrophysicists do not believe it as a theory. One of my favorite shows of all time, by the way, is called The Big Bang Theory. I love the way you stated this, by the way. Some people believe it, but astrophysics appeal to authority, by the way. Anyways, just slightly thrown in there. What did I just do? By the way, did you guys notice my background is me in space? Because I like it. Yeah, I should have just gone, hey, here you go read this. Yeah, everybody gets a little more aggressive when they're chatting, when they're typing. It's very interesting. Maybe that's the way I'm reading it. I doubt it. Let me see, actually. I want to pick a book out here. I just saw the comment. It's hilarious. Hey, I didn't know Jerome was a Mormon. God made the devil, so that makes God responsible for evil, unless there's free will, man. Like this, the American Cuban. You're what's the word here? You're equivocating here. Okay, so this is an equivocation fallacy on the word responsible. If by responsible you mean God knew it was going to happen and therefore created it anyways, it doesn't even have to be about the devil. It could just be sin. It could be whatever you want it to be. But once you add the concept that, hey, yes, but he didn't force them to do that, they chose to do that, then the entire argument falls apart. Guys, I don't know whether I should just say, trust me. You don't have to. Go read the literature. Go seriously read the literature. Don't have your conversations be between us, by the way. Okay? Like, oh, I just talked to Arthur about this stuff. Arthur could be wrong. I could misspeak. I can miscommunicate. There might be things that I might say wrong. Maybe I don't understand the argument as well as I thought I did. There could be many, many reasons as to why it shouldn't be just between us. But if you're going to make an argument that since God made everything, therefore he's responsible for the evil in the world, this is a problem of evil argument, okay? And within the philosophical world, this argument really has been defeated by Alvin Plantinga. He came up with what is called the free will argument, even the moral free will argument. You can go read these papers or books on the internet. Go find it, order it, read it, or whatever, rent it and read it, whatever you need to do and read it. This argument that God created it, therefore he's making them do it, is just not good once you plug in free will. It just falls apart. So you can say it every single time I'm streaming. You can come in here and be like, oh, what about this? And I'm going to tell you every single time, this is the answer to that question. It's not going to change. I'm not going to develop, unless I come up with a way better argument than Plantinga's argument. But I don't have one. And if you guys just want to argue with me and not continue to do your research in different areas, it's probably not the place, man. It's the point. Yes, Arnold, this is the only one left. I think the only other argument we need here is God is not omnipotent because he can't create a rock he can't lift.
This is a sickness of the highest order.
Yes. No one's called. No, we haven't had anyone call in today, by the way, guys. We haven't. We're probably not going to. I was actually looking for some commentary on the cosmological argument from somebody who's an atheist, explaining kind of what's going on. But okay, so no matter how, so here's the way William Rowe, who's passed away now, in his book Philosophy of Religion, an introduction, phrases the Kalam cosmological argument. He says, premise one, if our universe never had a beginning, an actual infinitive series of past events has occurred. I actually like the way he's phrasing this a lot better. I had forgotten about his phrasing of this. So, if our universe never had a beginning, an actual infinite series of past events has occurred. An actual infinite series of events in time is impossible. Therefore, our universe has a beginning. He goes on to say, the second step of the Kalam argument raises the question of whether the beginning of the universe had a cause. It is important to note that according to current science, the beginning of our universe also marks the beginning of time. So there simply is no temporal moment before the beginning of our universe, no prior moment at which something or someone might act so as to cause our universe to begin. I would rephrase that statement, and I would say, it is important to note that according to the current science, the beginning of our universe also marks the beginning of physical time. Just because there's various views of time, but I get what he's saying. And I think he would agree with me. So there simply is no temporal moment before. Okay, moving on. This means that if our universe were to have a cause, the cause, whatever it may be, could not have caused our universe by existing at some temporal moment before our universe existed. Correct. So, generally speaking, folks like William Lane Craig would completely agree with that because they believe in the timelessness of God. And actually, I think he goes on to say that. He says, universe by existing some temporal moment before our universe existed, and then acting as so as to bring about the existence of our universe. How then could our universe have been caused to exist? A prominent advocate of the Kalam cosmological argument, William Lane Craig, has noted that a number of philosophers have countenanced simultaneous causation. He cites an example provided by Immanuel Kant, a heavy balls resting on a cushion being the cause of a depression in the cushion. Craig concludes and goes on to Craig's conclusion. So, by the way, he's essentially arguing that, considering, if I can understand it right, and I think I am, but what he's saying is, considering that the universe had a beginning and the cause of the universe would have to be the sort of thing that is timeless, necessarily follows that the God we're talking about would be a God that has forever existed timelessly. That goes to the question that Radioactive Trees was talking about. And that's an atheist guy. Read books, guys. Again, that's why I said you're equivocating between what responsible means. In some ways, I can agree with you that God is ultimately responsible. The question at that point would come to be something like, did God have a good reason for allowing the universe to be the way it is and creating those things with the free will? That's a completely different argument than you saying he's responsible, therefore he's the cause of it. Gabe says, demonstrate the impossibility of an infinite regress. The infinite regresses don't answer anything. It's not that it's an impossible. Nobody says infinite regresses are impossibilities. What they're saying is that infinite regresses don't have explanatory power. They don't explain anything. What you might be asking, Gabe, there is you might be asking me to demonstrate the impossibility of an actual infinite. That's a completely different question. Please explain a decision by an agency void of time. Yeah, you just talk about logical priorities. Logically prior to. Now, I don't hold to that view, by the way. That's partly why I redefined what he said there. I think that God has always existed in time. It's just not measurable time and it's not physical time. So that will take us somewhere completely different. But I don't necessarily agree with Craig. on his conclusion that God has been timeless. And that could lead me into areas in various theological kind of circumstances when it comes to divine simplicity and various things, which is fine. What I'm saying is that I have a way of thinking about these things. It is not, what I'm not satisfied with is some of you guys sitting there and thinking because you ask a question, you have an argument. A question is not an argument. On Guard, actually, on the title, has a guy in a fencing outfit. But the conversation about God being timeless or in time or whatever like that is a theological one. Like, I don't need to have that conversation with you atheist lot. Unless you want to have a theological conversation, but in order for you to have a theological conversation, you first have to, at the very least for argument purposes, assume that there's a God. And then we can have a conversation as to whether it makes sense for God to be timeless or to be in time. That's fine. I don't know what you're talking about, but oh no, Arthur channeled his inner CC. I don't know what you're talking about there. What is CC? Barry, I do call-in shows, so you guys can call in. By the way, we have a guest tomorrow. No, not fencing equipment, man. It's a person fencing. How about the British, everybody? England beat North Macedonia 7-0 today. I wasn't thinking about the British because of Jerome per se. I was thinking about the British because of fencing for some reason. Have I ever done a formal debate? No, I have never done a formal debate. Can't say I'm a very big fan of formal debates. I guess they're fun to watch, depending who's debating. I mean, there's a lot of formal debates where I just 20 minutes into it, I'm done. I'm checked out. It's just they're not really good at it. I've never done it. I'm not very sure whether I would be good at it. Okay, some folks might think I might be good at it. I think formal debates require quite a bit of preparation and then just knowing how to debate properly and thinking quickly on your feet. So it might not be my cup of tea. Maybe one of these days I will do a formal debate. We'll see. Oh man, it's almost 4. That's worse. My inner capturing Christianity. I have no idea what that was a reference to in regards to Cameron. You could have said I channeled my inner Cameron instead of my inner capturing Christianity. Cameron's, I've met him once and I interviewed him. That interview's been lost because the audio came out to be bad for some reason. This is when Cameron was very, very new on his YouTube stuff. We connected at a conference, but now, but I don't know what did my inner capturing Christianity. What? I'm curious. Is there something him and I agree on? I said questions are not arguments, and I died inside. Oh, is that something Cameron says? Okay, then we're both right. not. You can't just say that. It's like, explain this to me. It's like, okay. It's just, I don't want someone walking away. Even if I can't explain it. If you ask me to explain something and I can't explain it, I go, hey, that's a really good question. I can't explain it. Doesn't mean you have an argument for that thing. It just means you asked me a question I didn't have the answer to. Someone else might have the answer to that question. By the way, in regards to the subject, I should say this. CC is just the way people refer to him, doesn't help that there's another apologist called Canadian Catholic. That's funny. It should be said that some of these things, Arthur, he literally had merch with that phrase on it. Really? Okay, that's cool. He's really good, man, when it comes to design and all that. Maybe I saw it and read it and subconsciously it's like stuck in there, and maybe Cameron should get credit for what I said. No idea. I hope he's not like have it in quotation marks and it says Cameron. But in regards to like God being in time and making decisions timelessly or something like that. Again, those are theologically natured conversations that even Christians disagree about and have conversations about. That doesn't mean, therefore, the atheist is right. Okay? It also means that I can change my mind on it. Like if today I believe that God is in time and has always been in time, and say when I do my study through divine simplicity or something, I see it being more neat and concise, and kind of logically following my view of simplicity, that God cannot be in time, or not necessarily in time, but just be timeless. And I change my mind on that. I would have an answer for your question in that paradigm, but I wouldn't make that some kind of a requirement for being a Christian or something. Also, the original Poe was laid out in a series of questions. So clearly questions can be arguments if you do it properly. What are you referring to there with Poe? I would be very careful to take anything that, say, Anselm says as an argument. I don't think they were intended on being arguments. People have derived that stuff and then developed arguments. Even some of the stuff from Augustine, those are reflections. I don't think they're doing arguments the way you and I were doing arguments earlier when it comes to the Kalam. But I'm curious, what is that abbreviation for? If you believe that timeless actions are not possible, or at the very least questionable, you will just reject what people typically have to say about the Kalam, surely. Unless you believe that God has always existed in time, like I do. Then you have no issues with it. But that's going to take us somewhere else. Conversation was. This is, I have no idea where okay, Job 1-3. Children died so that God could win the bet with the devil. How is that not sadistic? Genuine question, and one of the biggest sparks of my deconstruction. My response to that would be that you are viewing the book of Job outside of its of its genre, and it's an explanation. The book of Job, entirely speaking about it, is an explanation, a poetic explanation as to why there's evil in the world and how there could be non-human agents behind the evil in the world. it's not necessarily that God could win a bet or not. It's, here's a righteous man. He's only righteous because you give him everything he wants. And then there's attacks on this person, which in poetic storytelling, poetic narrative, is to tell us how this individual person is actually very committed to God. And he never abandons God. And he stumbles along the way, but he never abandons him. And so therefore I would say is what you're doing is you're misreading it. You are projecting things into the text that were never intended in the text. Probably evil. Sorry, man. I'm a bit slow today. Jerome. Yeah. No. You're right. It's just I for some reason the reason why I didn't think Prom of Evil, I think, is because we were talking about the Kalam and cosmology so much, where I was like, I don't know about an argument in that category that's abbreviated like that. Yeah, you're talking Prom of Evil. Correct. It is a question, but then it gets formulated properly. Right. It formulated into the sense of if-then statements. If the gods are like this, or if God is like this, therefore this. And then you get a proper argument that has been placed. But just, by the way, and that's a series of questions as well, not just one question. So as skeptics reject the Kalam, we tend to not think that timeless actions are coherent. Timeless actions are not essential to the Kalam. Problem solved. I don't think the Kalam necessitates timeless actions, by the way. Maybe Craig will take me, to task on that. Maybe one of these days we'll have William Lane Craig on our podcast, and we can ask him that. How would you guys feel if we had William Lane Craig on our podcast? Let me ask that question. Would you guys think that'd be cool? What's up, Paul Rezai? How are you? If it's not essential, I'm not sure why people invoke the success of the Big Bang to add credibility to the Kalam. Because God is not a thing that actually goes through an actual infinite. The actual infinite argument is about series of events, not a person, to my understanding. And that's why that, what's the word? That argument doesn't follow. I maybe Craig would think that it would. I've never seen him say something like that. I don't think he argues against it in the God and Time book. Hang on. Let me see if he does. timeless and omnitemporality, 129. And I haven't looked at this book in a long time. Let's see if he does actual... No, because the argument for divine timelessness that he argues for says this. It says we can formulate the argument as follows. God is the most perfect being. The most perfect being has the most perfect mode of existence. Temporal existence is a less perfect mode of existence than time. I'd push him on that all day. Therefore, God has the most perfect mode of existence. Therefore, God has a timeless existence. Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you look at my book, I got a question mark next to premise 3. He doesn't do an actual infinite sort of thing. The impossibility of a temporal person. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at this chapter to see if he argues for something like that. Jerome said Craig is one of like 3 apologists that cause me anger. Maybe because he's that good and you're terrified of him, Jerome, so you're angry inside and you don't even know why. I'd actually want to interview him on stuff that people don't usually interview him on, or ask him questions that I just think some folks don't, but we'll see. Have you ever had a theological conversation with ChatGPT? No, I have not. ChatGPT is not a real person. I prefer not to have conversations with it. Playing, by the way, I'm being silly there. I agree. Kalam does not require timelessness. There can be many dimensions to time beyond the narrow definition. Well, physical time, right? Yeah. American Cuban says, I went to Liberty Seminary and began applying hermeneutical principles. I found contradictions and hand cutting. I don't know what that phrase is. Also, God making a bet with the devil and thereby indirectly killing kids. Did you graduate from Liberty or did you drop out, American Cuban? William Craig is like a gentle grandma. You mean grandpa? I hope you mean grandpa. I could go on for ages, but he's been extremely heavily prevalent in all 3 philosophy of religion courses that I've taken for no reason. Clearly there's a reason when all 3 of your professors thought he's an important enough character to deal with. He said many rude things about people. Like what? I'm curious, by the way, as to what rude things he said about people. That come from? Okay, it seems like I have to go. Okay, hey, folks, do me a favor. If you really enjoy what we are providing here in regards to the apologetics content, the conversations, the streaming, and all of that, if you really enjoy it, and you want to support the work that we're doing, go to patreon.com/Apologia Center and become a partner with us. We are also in the midst, I know we were supposed to have started this, but we had some hiccups. We are also in the midst of trying to have an e-course on the temple that my friend Ani will teach. And we have an interview with her. You can go check that out. If you're interested in taking that e-course, please send me an email at info@apologiacenter.com. Let me know, and we can go with signing you up for that e-course. We'd really appreciate your support in all the ways that we are progressing and doing the work that we're doing here on this YouTube channel. But again, our work goes beyond this YouTube channel. So I would just challenge you, even if you're a Christian, I will challenge you, especially if you're a Christian, if we are benefiting you in one way or another, we would appreciate your investment back into the work that we do. So we do our best. Reach out to me. You guys have access to me. I respond to emails pretty quickly. And just that's like my little pitch for getting you guys to support what we're doing as we grow, as we aim at growing. By the way, we're at 4426, almost at 4450, and then we're going to hit 4,500 subscribers, guys. Exciting times. We're gaining about 8 to 10 subscribers a day. It's pretty good. You'll have to call in to explain all the specifics, but I cannot believe he gets away with so many things for a man of his reputation. Okay. Dropped out, never finished, but I had been studying the Bible informally through Ligonier and Grace to You for decades. Got it. Hey, if you want to create a correspondence between you and I, like a personal correspondence, I'm all game. Or even, I can even connect you with some other guys that could, if it's not me, like Emil asked you what seminary you went to. I could create a correspondence between you and Emil. You guys can go back and forth. I think that would be beneficial to the both of you. So just shoot me an email at info@apologiacenter.com, and we can take it from there. So, yeah, appreciate it, guys. I got to take my kids to soccer, so that's why I got to go. Take care. God bless, and I will see you tomorrow.